Hey, welcome back to my second of two videos responding to some of the different comments that I've gotten to the channel over the last year or so, and going through the question of whether or not my mind was changed based on the comments that I received. If you haven't watched the first part of this video, which is on responses to my Peter Hamill album rankings, you may wish to do that, though you can certainly finish this one first. In this video, I'm going to be talking about comments that came in response to the Genesis song rankings that I did, and comments regarding the review. As always, I'm Hans from Electric Brain, Electric Shadow. We are a contemporary art rock project that seeks to make music that's complex but accessible, emotionally nuanced, influenced by the history of classic prog rock but not defined by it. Check us out on Bandcamp or your favorite streaming service. Now, with the Genesis list, obviously, you could take 100 Genesis fans, and there are so many songs, nobody's going to make exactly the same list twice, but there are definitely certain things that seem to provoke people either by appearing too high or too low, And there were definitely some good points made here. John Dyslin, interesting that many Lamb songs are in the 90s. For me, I'd put Many Too Many higher. Lamb, though, to me, has many great songs, but lots of middling misses. Now, this is an interesting point, and probably something I agree with, right? Lamb is my favorite Genesis album, and as such, one of my 2 or 3 favorite albums ever. But I think a lot of the individual moments get power and weight from context. The songs out of context are going to land often fairly low, given how much I like the whole thing. I do think I probably like the whole album better than John does, but I don't really think he's disagreeing with me here, other than putting Many Too Many higher, which is probably just, is not relevant to the topic of Lamb, and obviously is something you can just kind of write off to personal taste, I think. Now, this isn't really a mind changed or unchanged thing, so I'm not gonna rate this comment that way. I just wanted to say that I do think it was a good point, and I wanted to give it a chance for a spotlight here. HPSOS says, Earl of Mar is far too high here. Clumsy lyrics and singing. You know what? I agree. I probably felt like I owed that song deference because it's an epic from a well-regarded album. I probably put it higher than I really felt deep down in my soul like I should. This guy's got it right. Mind changed. Another comment from HPSOS. All the elements of Deep in the Motherlode are there, sonically majestic, yet fails to break into the top 100. Time for a reassessment? Yes, absolutely. I think for a long time, the lyric bothered me because it felt like the same kind of kitsch westernism as something like Ballad of Big or Me and Virgil, right? And I don't like it when they do kitsch westernism. I think writing it off that way now I recognize was a mistake. There are actually some really fascinating lines, and it's a way more effective and interesting use of historical imagery than Ballad of Big or Me and Virgil. And, as I noted in my review of the song, it is in fact majestic as hell. I think I made a reference in the review to, if I remember right, the Cosmic Disco midsection. That change-up is brilliant. It's a great, great song. I probably would have put it, if I had to do over again, somewhere in the 50s or 60s. So, mind changed. Going on in that comment, ditto, you might recall, in Vancouver, Lower Than Open Door. Both have better vocals than the latter. I find Open Door to be almost unbearably poignant. That's a very, very emotionally moving song to me. And I think it's also a really interesting departure from their usual method to do a song that's so lushly textured, but has no drums. Now, Vancouver and You Might Recall, those are both wonderful songs. But I'd have to stand by the decision to put Open Door higher. It really, for the most part, is coming from a question of just personal response, but that's just such a it's just such a sad song, and it's such an effectively sad song, and I find the textures very appealing. I think Vancouver and You Might Recall are great songs too, but I'd probably stand by the order there. I'm going to say mind unchanged. And a last little comment from this, last section rather, of this comment. Dodo has passed the test of time. If only they'd changed the keyboard jingle the second time around. I'm assuming he means the little keyboard solo in the lurker bit, and added extra percussion. Now, this isn't necessarily a disagreement with me. I just think it's an excellent point. It is, in fact, I think, a good idea for something that might have made the song a little bit more complex in an effective way. And I really like the fact that he's making an intelligent critique of a song that he clearly really likes. Just wanted to give a quick kudos to that. I thought it was an excellent point. James Nelson, Keep It Dark has slowly crept up in my personal rankings over the years. I haven't gone through the hell of actually ranking the songs like you have, but I suspect it'd be even higher for me. Reno277, Keep It Dark is a weird one for me. I love it live, but the studio version I don't really care for. And the Reno277 comment, I'm compressing quite a bit, sorry. There's some really interesting points there about the comparison of the live and studio stuff, but I'm mostly just, for this time being, wanted to think a bit more about where Keep It Dark fell in the ratings. Now, one thing about a project like the Song Ranking Project, it spurs you to think in detail about songs you might not have thought about before. Now, Keep It Dark, like I mentioned in my review of it, it has some remarkable sonic details, and that match between lyrical subject and sound, the way those two mirror each other as they shift across the song, is some of the most intelligent, I think, some of the most intelligent work that they ever did in terms of creating that match. Now, I haven't really listened to the live version all that many times, frankly. I did look it up when I got that comment initially, and I do agree about Phil's delivery in the live version. He does pull it off in a more emotional way that's very effective. I don't know if I have the same sense of disappointment with the studio version. In fact, I'd say I definitely don't. I really enjoy the studio version. But regarding Keep It Dark as a whole, it really is a wonderful little song that I probably haven't given enough credit to over the years, and I think really only recently came to understand how much thought and detail went into it. Now, would I put it higher? I mean, that's a hard call. There's a lot of great stuff above it. But yeah, I think I had it at number 60, if I'm remembering right. I can see moving it up 5 or 10 spaces maybe. So yeah, I would say mine changed. Mark Herslan, just a job to do better than Musical Box. It's a joke, I can't take this seriously. I'm still looking at this ranking after months, but I do not believe in your appreciation anymore. Sorry. It is ridiculous, a masterpiece of very bad taste. Yowza. Reno277. Funnily enough, I listened to the Shapes album recently and found myself enjoying Just a Job to Do much more than usual. It does deserve to be high, however, I really don't see how you can rank it higher than all-time greats like Carpet Crawlers and Musical Box. Yeah, that's fair. I think Just a Job to Do is an exceptionally good song relative to its context. I think it gets very little attention in the scheme of their whole catalog, and I didn't personally appreciate its most interesting elements until I was well into my 20s. I think those things led to a burst of overenthusiasm in which I put it about 30 spaces higher than it really deserved. By the time I realized it should have been somewhere in the 50s, I'd already done the 50s video. Yeah, mine changed. John Dyslin, Hold On My Heart is not meant to be dark. Another song so beautiful as well that I'd rank higher. I guess the point I was trying to make there wasn't that it was meant to be dark, so much as that you could take very similar elements, tweak them just slightly to make a dark song, and that might be more compelling than the version we have. I may have misspoken there, and ultimately it may just not have been a particularly good observation. But, just wanted to address the possible misunderstanding there. Not going to give it a mind changed or unchanged, just wanted to clarify. Going on, Tonight at 120. Oh my, probably top 25 in my book. From Max Power. Now, Tonight at 120 hurt my heart. I feel, unlike a lot of long songs from the modern era, this doesn't drag. The instrumental break is my favorite part of the song, but I love the drum machine and the loops and stuff. It's also a very progressive song, embracing new technology, and yet still sounding less manufactured than half the crap that uses that today. I don't think much of Invisible Touch as an album, but this song and Land of Confusion I would comfortably have in my top 50. I would say that Max has made some excellent points about the virtues of Tonight, Tonight, Tonight. It is using cutting-edge technology to make an epic that sprawls, but at the same time is still tightly composed and evokes a dark atmosphere. I didn't think to make this comparison when I was recording the video, but you can make an argument that this is the closest thing they've done to something that could almost have fit, for instance, on Peter Gabriel's Security album, which is maybe my favorite of the solo Gabriels. Now, I do still think that in places it feels melodically underwhelming to me, especially the bridge sections. But you could argue the same thing about much of Security. And, I've always been willing to give that album credit for atmosphere and texture, even in places where it feels melodically underwritten. I don't know if I would call Tonight, Tonight, Tonight top 50 material, but I would be willing to say that I have undervalued the appealing qualities that Max has pretty persuasively laid out here. And I'd be willing to kick it up 20 or 30 places, so I would say mine changed. Shaq Cohen says, I think your thoughts on Calling All Stations as a kid were correct. Definitely the best since Duke, in my opinion. Way overanalyzed by most pundits. I suppose presumably I'm implicated in that. I just listen and enjoy it. Man, I'm on Team Calling All Stations. I want that album to be good. I want people to like it. I'm happy anytime someone says positive things about it. I don't personally feel unalloyed pleasure when I listen to it, so I'd probably stick by the individual song rankings. But even though I don't love it in the pure way that I used to, it has an underdog quality that makes me want to see it succeed. And I appreciated the positive word that was put for it here and by other folks. So last thing to address is the Closure continuation video. Now, I'm not really going to quote any comments directly here. I will say that I don't think I took into account how literally people would take the title. I'm sure everyone who's watching this is at least somewhat familiar with Stanley Milgram's experiments on obedience to authority. If nothing else, you'd have to be familiar with it to appreciate the Peter Gabriel song about it. And one aspect of what they did during those experiments was, when they're trying to convince the subject to shock the other person, they would use various lines to coerce them, and the least successful line, as I recall from when I read a bit about this, as I remember, the least successful line was, "You have no other choice." You tell people that generates a level of pushback that many of the other lines they were using to cajole people did not. Now, even though the general reputation of the Milgram experiments was that they produced a startling level of unquestioning obedience to authority, that particular phrase, "you have no other choice," got the most pushback. Now, there may be people here who are much more familiar with the Milgram experiments than I am. You may also be wondering what the hell this has to do with my Porcupine Tree review. Sorry if I'm oversimplifying, and I'll make the connection momentarily. So the title of the video basically was a Milgram experiment, right? Where I told a bunch of people, you have no other choice, now push the button and shock this innocent Porcupine Tree album. And of course, that didn't go over very well. There was about a month where every single time I logged on to check my comments, I had someone telling me I was wrong because they personally were not disappointed with the album. That got awfully repetitive after a while. But I probably should have known that was how that would go over. Now, if you pay attention to the text of the video, the point I was trying to make was really more of an argument for why the album might end up being underrated because of the context of its release, right? The argument wasn't, you're going to be disappointed because the content of this album is bad. The argument was, this album may end up underrated because it's in a challenging release situation. I'm not totally sure how many of the people commenting on the video understood that. Now, it's quite possible that many people totally understood that and still thought I was an asshole and it was a bad video. That's legitimate. Just, Wanted to briefly clarify the idea I was trying to get across. As it turns out, it does not seem to have been an underrated album, so obviously I was wrong in that regard, although I do think that more people dislike that album, or were in fact let down by it, than you would think from looking at the comments section for that video. Now, would I like it if my third most viewed video wasn't 49% disliked? Yeah, that'd be great. I would prefer that. But I want a lot of things that I'll never get. In the short term, when I posted that, and in the period afterward where it was getting the responses that it did, I had the serious fear that I had destroyed all my credibility forever and ruined my promising career as a guy who talks about prog rock on the internet. In the long term, I realized that I probably never had that promising career anyway, and also that there was a period of increased subscriber growth following that video, which tapered off once people stopped being annoyed by it. The period where I stopped getting a comment every single day where somebody said that I was wrong because they were not personally disappointed in the album happened to coincide with the end of a period where I was getting at least 2 or 3 new subscribers every day. So in the short term, I thought, man, I really messed up by being too provocative. In the long run, I don't think it really matters at all. So regarding the title of the video, it may have been a little bit tacky, it may have been trying a little bit too hard, but I'm still going to say, was the title of the video a good or bad decision? I think it was fine. Mind unchanged. Now, how has the album aged for me? Well, I suppose I have a psychological incentive not to change my mind about it, so take this with a grain of salt, but several months onward, I still think pretty much the same things I did when I shot the video, actually. The first 3 songs have some really creative and interesting arrangements where the trio format really seems like it shook up what they do, have a lot of great compositional details, very interesting dynamic structures. Then you have Dignity, whose arrangement is a bunch of recycled Pink Floydisms and whose lyric strives for profundity and achieves unintentional comedy. Has to be in the all-time bottom 10 of Porcupine Tree songs. Many people leapt to its defense. I still remain puzzled as to why. Then the back half of the album pretty much has all the virtues of the front half, but in slightly less compelling ways, often brought down by notably lackluster lyrics. Now, I'm getting especially hung up on the issue of lyrics here because Wilson really can be a remarkable lyricist at times. Some of his best lyrics are among some of my favorite lyrics of all time by any artist. And if this were, I don't know, an anecdote album, I mean, I love anecdote or anecdote, I'm probably mangling the pronunciation, but if this were an anecdote album, it wouldn't bother me at all if the lyrics felt half-baked. I don't pay attention to anecdote and lyrics for the most part. They're not a lyrics band. They actually have some really interesting image and phrases kind of sprinkled in there, but, they could kind of be saying anything and it wouldn't bother me too much. But Wilson is somebody that, when I get one of his albums, I'm really excited to hear what he has to say. That's a major part of the interest and appeal for me. So, the years just pass like trains. I wave, but they don't slow down. That's a great lyric, right? It's a visually rich metaphor which conveys an emotion that's familiar but still compelling. I'm afraid to be happy and I couldn't care less if I was to die. That's just the literal statement of a one-dimensional feeling. That's not very good. The wolf is at the door somehow. The culling of the herd is now. That is 2 completely stock phrases with random words tacked on at the end so that they rhyme. Walk the plank, abandon ship, take it slow, don't lose your grip. That's just 4 cliches strung together. That doesn't even count as writing. And I'm singling these phrases out because all 3 of the things that I just picked on are very prominent in the song. They are focuses of attention, or they're repeated over and over. Seems like this stuff doesn't bother a lot of people, but it really bothered me the first time I listened to it and continued to significantly drag down my ability to enjoy the album. In the comments section, I think somebody said that it took him 12 years to make the thing, so maybe I should give it a few more listens before I talk about it. It didn't take him 12 years to write those lyrics, I don't hope. So overall, it's a mostly enjoyable album with a few great songs, some interesting ideas. It's a fascinating departure. It has significant flaws that bring it down to a level below, I think, most of their best work. That's what I thought when I posted the review. That's still what I think. mind unchanged. All right, well, thanks very much for your time and attention. As always, feel free to leave more comments in my video responding to your comments. We can get an Ouroboros kind of thing going on. Hope everybody has a good week.